What's going on? Tectonic Edge here, and welcome to the board. A couple people have asked me over the years to do a Tron sideboarding deck tech, and so here we are. And of course, the best place to start off with that is Karn Great Creator. Why Karn Great Creator, you might ask? Well, give it just a second. Because running Karn Great Creator in your deck, you can grab any artifact, so any one artifact in your sideboard is equivalent to running 4 of it in the main board. Yep. As you can see, I'm trying something a little different. I didn't want to just do me talking about it, so hopefully this will be entertaining. But yeah, so that's pretty powerful. Makes game 1 a lot better because we have access to a lot of different effects with Karn. And this is going to be a breakdown. Yeah, it's great. A couple of downsides is that we kind of have to debate how many sideboard slots are going to Karn versus how many are going to an regular sideboard. And of course, this first video is going to be talking about the core of that list. So, the primary cards, these are the cards, or at least the types of cards, that if I'm running Karn Great Creator, I personally would run. And of course, this is all subjective. Everyone's going to have their own ideas. These are my thoughts on it. These are what I think the core is going to be. But yeah, so if you're ready to get into it, 3, 2, 1, here we go. Alright, starting this list off with Liquimetal Coating. Kind of the top artifact. If you're running Karn Great Creator, you are always running Liquimetal Coating. It is a 2-mana artifact that says tap, target permanent becomes an artifact in addition to its other types until end of turn. Now, on its own, not that powerful of an effect, but when paired with Karn Great Creator, who one pulls it out of the sideboard with its -2, but then he has a static ability that says all artifacts our opponents control can't activate abilities. So we can go ahead and just shut down anything with this. So Planeswalkers, we use this on their upkeep. They can't use their Planeswalkers, activate abilities of creatures, and most importantly, land. This doesn't have a restriction like a lot of things does on shutting things down where lands are excluded. A lot of things will exclude mana abilities. This will shut down mana abilities, and that makes it powerful. But the real power then comes in with Karn's +1 ability, where we can take a target artifact and turn it into a artifact creature with power and toughness equal to its mana value. And lands have 0 mana value, so of course we turn our opponent's land into an artifact, then an artifact creature, it goes to the graveyard. And this lets us pretty well control the board state if we get it off early enough. The big downside to this is it's kind of very reliant on Karn Great Creator, and Karn Great Creator is pretty easy to remove. He's at 3 after grabbing an artifact, so he dies to a lightning bolt. There's a bunch of other removal in the meta right now, Unholy Heat, and if Karn Great Creator's gone, this doesn't do a lot until we get Karn Great Creator back. But if we have Karn, if they don't interact with it, it can be an easy way to control the game early on, and it's very good depending on what deck you're against. So a Cascade deck or any kind of combo deck that's not going to have a lot of interaction and just needs to get to a certain mana value, this is great on turn 3, especially on the play, and you can pretty well lock the game up. Or in a situation where if we have our opponent mulligan down pretty low, this gives us a great opportunity to get it out and start controlling the game, because they either are not going to have the lands to keep playing into it, or they're not going to have the removal to deal with it. Aside from that, it goes into a lot of different matchups. It's up to you to decide whether you think it's going to get removed. It's always a feel bad when you're sitting there, you play it, and then they kill Karn. If you're game 2 or later and have brought in artifact destruction as well, it has a side effect of pretty much this turns artifact destruction into permanent destruction. So Nature's Claim becomes destroy target permanent, they gain 4 life. If you are in a situation where you really need to get tricky, you can turn specific permanents into artifacts to Nature's Claim, but say on your side for burn, but at that point it's just a target to Nature's Claim itself. Other than that, it's just a good card. 10 out of 10. We'll likely use again. And we're on to the next one. Alright, next up we have Ensnaring Bridge, a 3-mana artifact. So comes out the same turn we play Karn. That says creatures with power greater than the number of cards in your hand can't attack. Comes out if we have Tron. If we don't have Tron, it's a turn slower, but typically we want to assume we have Tron if we're playing Karn Great Creator. This card is great because it pretty much lets us stall out the game so we can get ahead. It's very powerful against creature decks like Jund, Rhinos, sometimes Hammer Time, sometimes Prowess, just depending on what they do. And those are pretty big odds in the deck. It's great if we're behind, if they've got a board state about to wipe us out, we play this, and it can pretty much save us right then and there. Of course, if they ever destroy it, we're dead. But that's you can say that pretty much about anything. The downside where it's based on your hand size can be, it's both a blessing and a curse for us, because Tron usually mulligans pretty low, so most things aren't going to be able to attack us. But Tron, you can also end up in some situations where you'll either lose the ability to get Tron or use Tron, say a Ghost Quarter, it goes off, and you're going to get a lot of big drops in your hand you're not going to be able to play. If that doesn't happen, though, and you still have Tron, we usually win because we can start playing advantage cards. You already have Karn Great Creator. If they don't answer that, you get another thing, and you can start, just build your board state, control their board state, and eventually you get there. So yeah, it's a great card to grab one behind. And it's a great card to get game 1 because there's less artifact removal game 1 than you will likely encounter game 2 and 3. You'll occasionally get, like, there are some decks that'll have, I think it's Culligan's Command main board, or a couple of decks that'll have Teferi is it Time Raveler? Yeah, it's Teferi Time Raveler, the 3-mana one that bounces it back to your hand and you'll lose. But few and far between, and it's still a really good card to grab and has won plenty of games. On the other side too, once you do control it, Tron usually has an easy way to get rid of it, or we just let our hand get big, because most of our big things, barring the Titans, like Wurmcoil, getting a hand back to 6 is feasible. But yeah, that is Ensnaring Bridge, a great card to grab when against creature decks. Alright, I think it's time for the next one. Alright, next up we have Trinisphere, a 3-mana artifact that says, as long as Trinisphere is untapped, every spell that would cost less than 3 costs 3. Pretty much, 1 mana, 2 mana, 0 mana spells? Nope, they all cost 3. This is great against decks such as Storm, Burn, anything where we don't want them doing multiple things per turn. And it's very easy for Tron to run because, well, we produce 7 mana on turn 3. And with that 7 mana, we can either do a couple small things each turn, or, we do our big things and our opponents have less time and less spells to interact with it. And it pairs especially well with the Karn Great Creator combo. If we have this out, plus Liquimetal Coating to keep them below 3 lands at all time, we've locked down the game and pretty much just won right there. So yeah, the upside is we lock out things. Storm, they can't combo off as this is out. Burn limits them to about 1 spell per turn usually, since they're pretty mana light in their decks. Occasionally they can get up till 2, but if the game's gone that long, we're in a very strong position usually. Cascade, they'll have to pay for the thing to cascade into. Likewise, any free spells. So if you want protection from something like Force of Negation or other 0-cost spell, this is it. Downside is, of course, it affects us. So say our opponent manages to knock out a Tron land, we're going to have a little bit of a tricky time building back up because Tron, we're either running big stuff or little stuff. And if our little stuff, say we have to spend 3 of our mana to cast the Exhibition map, it'll be next turn before we can crack it. Yeah. But all in all, a pretty good card. It'll win you matches, and there are some times in just other matches too where it'll be like, you know what, I'll grab this. It's going to hinder them enough that it's going to let me pull ahead. Anytime where they can cast multiple small spells at a turn, if you can limit it to just one, or, you know, make them choose between casting a spell or holding up counter magic, it's good. And on to the next one. Alright, next up we actually have two cards that kind of fill the same role, but are very subtly different. We have Pithing Needle and Sorceress Spyglass. Pithing Needle is a 1 mana. When it enters the battlefield, choose a card name, and activated abilities of that card can't be activated unless they're mana abilities. Sorceress Spyglass is a 2 mana card that does the same, but you also get to look at your opponent's hand. So, added information for double the cost. Now, personally, I'm more of a Pithing Needle fan. That double the mana is relevant. Seeing your opponent's hand, but I can see the reason of running both. Pithing Needle is sometimes easier, especially in situations where you don't have Karn out, or, well, okay, you have Karn out, but you don't have Tron online, so you can turn... pretty much if you have 5 mana but not Tron, you can play it out, or if you've had to use it to go get Tron. Sorcerer's Spyglass, a little less likely, but still not impossible. Again, seeing your opponent's hand, it's valuable information, and the more information you have, the better. Both of these are very technical cards to use, because it does require kind of either knowing what your opponent's running, or being able to guess what they're running. So the more knowledge you have of the meta, the better these cards get. If you're not familiar with the meta, Sorcerer's Spyglass is probably the better option, since it lets you get a peek at the cards before naming. With that said, you can pull off some pretty technical tricks with them too, which are pretty fun. Like Pithing Needle, so your opponent can't respond to you naming a card. Once it's on the battlefield, they have to do anything in response. And if they don't crack their fetch lands, you can name their fetch lands. And they can't use them then, because it's not a mana ability. Pretty good. It shuts down a lot of things. You can keep a lot of combo decks for winning. Pithing Needle is also slightly better, in my opinion, for the rare cases where you have to bring it into the main board, say for a Neoform matchup, which is making a recurrence now. I'm not happy to see it back, but... you know, main board the Pithing Needle, play it turn 1, it's about your best hope. But yeah, pretty powerful cards. They do good. Make sure you have to know what you're naming, though. And there are a lot of similar names, especially with Planeswalkers. In fact, there's a pretty famous thing in history where somebody named Borgamos instead of Borbogamos in Rage in a big tournament. And because of that, they lost the tournament. I think they've changed the rules so that to the point where so long as your opponent knows, but in this it's pretty specific because you are, at least online, you're clicking. But yeah, other than that, great card, great way to shut down a card, and if your opponent relies on one card to win, like Charbelcher, you win. Next up, we have the graveyard cards, or the graveyard hate cards. We have Relic of Progenitus, Tormod's Crypt, and Grafdigger's Cage. Relic of Progenitus is kind of the mainstay for Tron, and you will usually run a couple of these main board. It is a 1 mana, enters the battlefield, tap it to remove a card from a graveyard. Whoever is controlling the graveyard gets to choose, or you can pay 1, sack it, draw a card, and exile both graveyards. It exiles itself as well. Tormod's Crypt is like that for a single graveyard, but it's a 0 mana spell, and Grafdigger's Cage says things can't enter from the graveyard. And a lot of these, they fill the same slot. There are answer to graveyard decks like Dredge or anything with a strong graveyard interaction. Living End, we want these cards. But also things like... is it Murktide, because we can install the Delve effects. They're relatively useful cards. The graveyard effects, there's enough graveyard interaction out there right now. You really want one. Again, Relic I find the most useful because the way it interacts with Karn, since it exiles itself, is you can go and grab it again. Tormod's Crypt is, I believe, a single graveyard. It is 0 though, so you can literally get it the turn you play Karn with no extra cost. And Grafdigger's Cage is a permanent, nothing comes into the graveyard, which is pretty powerful too, but it doesn't draw you a card like the Relic. Personally, I go for the Relic, especially for the main board. But I could see Grafdigger's Cage and potentially Tormod's Crypt if you are more worried about not having Tron online when you do this. Because Tormod's Crypt is a turn 4 no matter what if you have Karn. But yeah, graveyard effects are pretty nice. Cycling Relic is nice because, again, you can go grab it with Concrete Creator, and you pretty much can kind of have a pseudo draw card every 3 turns, plus keep graveyards down. Yep. I don't really have much more to say about that, and on to the last one. In a sec. Just a sec. Alright, here we go. And last but not least is our big win con in the sideboard. This is something purely you'd see with Concrete Creator builds, and this is the card you grab that you want to try and win the game with. So oftentimes you're grabbing this, it's not going to come out the turn you play Karn, but it doesn't really rely on Karn. So you can grab this, they can kill Karn, you play it the next turn, and it has a big effect. And the 3 ones I most often see in this slot and run myself are Walking Ballista, Wurmcoil Engine, and SUndering Titan. Walking Ballista is a XX costed spell that says it enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it. You can remove a +1/+1 counter on it, deal damage to any target, and 1 damage to any target, so it pings. And then you can pay 4 to put another counter back on it. This makes it a great mana sink because we can create a big creature. We start swinging in with it. It can pretty much do double its damage in any 1 turn, so if we get enough hits in with it, it becomes lethal. But it's also great for controlling the board, because that ping effect and the ability to refuel it can dish out a lot of damage over time. If we've got a deck or up against a deck that plays a lot of creatures or creature combos, this is a great way to answer it. It can technically enter the same turn you play Karn if it's turn 3. But you usually wait till turn 4 so you can play it on 3. Otherwise, it comes in as a 1/1, so you could ping a low drop thing out if you really needed to. Usually, it's better to wait for the big one. But yeah, it's a great. It's a win con. It's not usually the best win con in the current meta because, again, it can be answered fairly easily. But it's got a great mix of control. Usually I'll have this and one of the other 2 in my sideboard. And let's talk about the other 2 now. Wurmcoil Engine is actually, it's a main board card. Only reason it's in the sideboard is because you can grab it with Concrete Creator. So you have, say you run 3 in the main, 1 on the side, that's like having 7 in total. Just a couple of them cost 4 extra. But you can wait till turn 4 to do it. So it's pretty much Tron's version of Luris at that point. What's nice about Wurmcoil Engine is it's a 6 mana, 6/6 Death Touch lifelink, and when it dies, create 2 tokens, 3/3 lifelink, 3/3 Death Touch. So it's very hard to remove completely off the board, and that life gain and ability to kill whatever it blocks or whatever blocks it is very effective. This is a very powerful win con for our deck. It's one of the few creatures we actually run. Most everything else is planeswalkers, but it's in there for a reason. And it is very good. Last one being SUndering Titan, which is it's a powerful creature, being a 7/10, I believe. Yep, a 7/10. But the real benefit is its effect. When it enters the battlefield, it destroys a basic land of each type. So if your opponent has a lot of basic colors, you destroy 2, 3, 4 lands. That can be pretty effective, especially early game like turn 4 or 5. But then it has the added effect of you then have a big creature on the battlefield. If it gets destroyed, you do the same thing, so you can wipe out the rest of their land. It makes it very tricky to actually want to remove this. And we actually run a main board card when we run this called Yavimaya, Cradle of Growth, that turns all lands into forest. Makes it very easy to add just that extra type and remove lands we wouldn't normally use. I mean, we could use that to theoretically get rid of a Tron land if we really needed to. But it's a powerful win con. Land interaction is always powerful. And it's my personal, of the three, I usually run that, and occasionally I'll add a Walking Ballista into the sideboard. Something else with the Karn board here is, I say turn 3 play Karn and grab these. Technically, you can grab them turn 3, but you can also gamble with it as well, and you can get 2 activations out of Karn. So if they don't have a way to interact with Karn, grab something small that's relevant for 3, then grab one of these on the next turn. Either way, it's an extra win con to grab, which is awesome. Thank you for watching the video. I think we're drawing to the end here. Let me know what you think about these cards. Let me know if I missed any uses you know for them, or if you think it's something else should definitely be in the core. Again, this is just the cards. If I'm running Karn Great Creator, I'm at least having these cards or one of these cards in my deck. There are a lot of cards that I'll cover in future videos that'll be likely run, but not always. Conditional cards, cards that are spicy includes, and of course I want to get to the board outside of the Karn board as well, because there's a lot you can do with that. The big drawback to the Karn board is everything here is play turn 3 or later, which is, I mean, that's a little rough. If we're against Neoform or something that wins quicker than that, this whole chunk of our sideboard isn't usable. So yeah, thank you for watching. Let me know what you think. Thank you for helping me get to 400 subscribers. I always try and do something different, so I'm starting this video. Definitely, I hope you enjoy the little art things. It seemed like a cool idea rather than just having, a screen looking at the cards. Little bit of action going on there. Like the video if you found it enjoyable. Share it with your friends. Tectonic Edge here, signing out. I'll let the video finish because there's a little bit more left on this one. But yeah. And I'll be back to normal videos coming up. I missed one last night because I was working on this and I was like, wow, this is taking a long time. Alright, bye.